Hello everyone, and welcome to our presentation today where we will discuss how organizations can benefit from a unified PPM and Agile portfolio by connecting Microsoft Project Online with Microsoft Visual Studio Team Services, or TFS if you're on premise. Before we get started, we have a few quick logistics to go over with you. So first off, we will not be opening the line for questions. However, we will be answering questions that are captured in the chat and question panel throughout today's presentation. Also, you can feel free to email us directly. We will be providing our contact information later on in the presentation. And if for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, don't worry, we will be distributing the recording of today's presentation to all the registrants following the webinar. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jim for his presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. My name is Jim Patterson, and I'm with Tivity, and excited to talk to you today about our topic of unified PPM, or Project and Portfolio Management, together with Agile Management, all in a combination of solutions working seamlessly together. For those of you who are not familiar with Tivity, we are an organization that provides enterprise business and project management solutions that are built for Microsoft Office 365 and the Microsoft Cloud. We've been working with project and portfolio management and work management solutions on the Microsoft technology for well over 20 years, our team has. Our approach to this is really providing pre-built business solution applications that help people get their solutions up quicker and quicker time to value and with less cost and less risk. Today, with the movement to the cloud, we provide online SaaS solutions and infrastructure as a service solutions to really help people get this up quickly, try it out, and get effective with it very quickly. The Microsoft Cloud technology is a very robust platform and providing more and more business capabilities over time. As far as what we provide in this realm, we not only deploy solutions that are available out of the box from Microsoft, we also have value-added products that help people get more value out of these solutions, and also deployment services that help people do this effectively. We also provide all the training and ongoing support services that you might want, so you can consider us a one-stop shop in this realm. So today's for the agenda, we'll talk a little bit about the rise of technology and how that's breeded some needs that we're going to show you today. Also the problems with disconnected systems, which most organizations have today with different systems for different things and different purposes. We'll also talk about some of the benefits of Agile, project and portfolio management, and then really discuss and show how Microsoft Project Online, along with Visual Studio Online, can provide a robust combined solution to address the needs and pain points of many organizations that they're facing today. So let's talk about the rise of technology. You know, things change in the market landscape. If you look at these types of businesses and things that went from more traditional brick and mortar, things people used to buy products exclusively from brick and mortar stores like Woolworths or any department store. The evolution of technology and innovation of using that technology by folks like Amazon have really changed the landscape and the needs out there. The same thing happened with videos and the advent of Netflix. What's going on with taxi cabs and how technology and innovation has really spawned Uber as a preeminent way that people want to travel. Also the way people do things like soft drinks and the automated machines and computerized machines that people get their soft drinks from in some of the more mainstream places like McDonald's these days. All those things have changed the way we do business. That also changes the way that things get delivered, and the organizations that provide these services and products, as well as the customers themselves, find that they consume and they distribute things in different ways. Internally, for the organizations that are providing these services and products to the marketplace, the way executives have to approach this, the way folks that take care of the customers and customer service and customer care, the folks that actually develop the software. Because really we're becoming a software world. Even organizations that you wouldn't think of as software organizations are driven behind the scenes by software and are becoming software organizations. And then the project management offices or project management organizations that actually have to stay on top of this and make sure that we're working on the right things and then delivering the things well. This affects the way that they do business. And so traditional methods, things the way we've managed projects in the past with traditional methods, are giving way to some new approaches and a need for agility to deliver things faster. Instead of releasing software once every 2 to 3 years from large organizations, it's more continuous delivery of that software, maybe once every couple weeks for some of the more advanced companies like Netflix that are out there. So the idea the needs have changed out there, so we have to rethink in some ways the way we do things. A little something out here about the use of Agile as approach for project management and ways that we deliver software. A company called VersionOne, one of the leaders in the Agile industry, does an annual State of Agile report, and they just completed their 10th one here in 2016. And this number keeps going up, but as of this last survey, 95% of organizations are practicing Agile in some part of their organization or in some fashion. 95%. That's up from just 80% in 2011. But this number, as you can see, keeps increasing over time, meaning whether or not an organization wholesale buys into Agile as an approach for the way they do their projects or their development work, they are at least using it in some areas, in some pockets, or in some teams. What are some of the concerns that prevent Agile adoption? Well, some of it really comes down to, and these are from the State of Agile survey as well, is the perception that the lack of upfront planning is something that could be problematic. Loss of management control at 30% of the respondents were two of the key reasons. Management opposition, which I guess if those are the perceptions, that would breed the management opposition. Things like lack of documentation, lack of predictability, and some of this stuff is really perceptions on the way that Agile is done. But the idea here is that there are concerns in organizations that prevent them from moving wholesale into an Agile culture. But that does not preclude the need for, where appropriate, that Agile methods can be used to deliver the projects that we need quicker and responding to change in an effective fashion. So a blend of approaches seems to be something that's happening probably on a more regular basis out there. Organizations are doing Agile in parts or for some types of projects in there, but a lot of organizations, and I think the more progressive ones, realize that using Agile techniques such as Scrum or DevOps in the delivery side of things are not the only or even the best indicator of an organization's speed or flexibility. It's finding the right methods and the right approaches for the right projects or the right initiatives that really is going to make us more effective and more agile. So most organizations these days are more likely to use several different project management approaches, and this data comes from a PMI publication, Project Management Institute, of capturing the value of project management through organizational agility. As you can see here, Agile or more iterative approaches are being used in between 60 and 70% of the cases. More lean approaches, that's common in a lot of manufacturing or product development type of organizations, over 50%. Traditional waterfall is actually a little less than that. And extreme methods, things like XP or extreme programming and other types of variants of those types of things are out there as well. And organizations tend to be using a blend of these, it seems. So what kind of key challenges is this bringing up for folks? Well, depending on your role, those challenges may be different. So for example, in this world where we have different methods and different approaches, project managers are looking at managing projects with different teams doing different things, meaning they may not have direct visibility into development schedules for folks that are developing software. Consequently, they may not be able to react quickly to changes by not having maybe current information or visibility into the things that they need to make those decisions on those changes. They may not fully understand development issues because the information may be totally housed within the development teams themselves. And the resources tend to be distributed more and more with multinational companies and outsourcing of at least some of the development function within organizations. Resources can be distributed all over the globe. Now for the developers themselves, they need different tools. They may not be using traditional project management tools like Microsoft Project or Project Online. They may be in something like Visual Studio or Visual Studio Online and TFS and using those tools for their planning, tracking, because they're also being used for their code management, for example, and source code control and configuration management. They may not have any automation or tied into the whole approval or rejecting process. That may be part of a governance process within an organization. And they may not have visibility into all the other issues outside of their world of developing software. So this is just two examples, but the disconnect there is that traditional PPM tools in the past have been designed for the plan and implement structure. You know, the Gantt chart, planning, you know, designing, developing, implementing. And the idea that waterfall type of serial approach is not the way software development has been going in the marketplace. So development or tools are needed specifically for those software projects. And then even if we do that, there are different flavors of approaches that are being used by the software development teams. So the planning and the execution that's being done may be using more Scrum or more Kanban or some variation or hybrid of those that are very popular out there, and mixed in with internal processes and culture and having those flavors added onto the hybrid mix. So people are disconnected between planning and execution at times because up front these projects and initiatives are being planned, analyzed, selected, and evaluated through some type of selection process, whether it's a formal governance structure or some type of steering committee structure. But those decisions are made to determine what an organization is going to be working on. And the idea is to tie these things all together so that everybody has visibility and everybody has a common approach to working on the right things and then doing it well in execution. So what would a unified, at a high level, PPM and Agile solution look like? Well, the idea would be is that in a common structure of, say, portfolios of different portfolios of projects or initiatives, those may be broken down into different programs, which could be product lines, they could be business units, they could be other things that divide the types of aggregations of projects that we're doing. But underneath those, the projects that are being executed, some may be more traditional or waterfall type project approaches, and others may be more agile or iterative type of approaches. And the idea that today is that in most cases out there, folks are using different tool sets that are not well connected to address the needs of these different types of projects at the project level, meaning you have segmented and fragmented data and processes. Even now, where Agile has been in the past something that's bubbled up from team levels where different teams are taking Agile approaches, the software development and Agile industry really have recognized the need for quite some time that there has to be an ability to scale this across organizations. Coming out now is the fourth iterations 4.0 of the Scaled Agile Framework, or called SAFe. And as you can see at some of these levels, some of the concepts are the same. You've got the team level execution that's being done. You've got aggregations into programs or different releases across those programs, or what we call Agile release trains, all the way up through value streams, which are streams of value that are being delivered. These could be products lines. They could be some type of other effort or initiative that's being delivered within an organization. And then these all roll up to portfolios above and ultimately up to the enterprise. So the key here is that the structures that we're talking about are not necessarily incompatible. This is really designed more towards iterative approaches using Agile. But the idea is that we can combine these to meet the needs of the different levels of the organization, from the executive level at the portfolio and the enterprise level, all the way down through the team level. So what might a solution look like from a functional solution architecture? Well, From what we're talking about today within the Microsoft technology ecosystem, there are the components here that can allow you to do all the things that we're talking about. For example, what's shown here to the left on an innovation hub concept might be leveraging something like SharePoint within an organization, where stakeholders, folks from the business, even outside customers, could actually be putting in ideas or requests and collecting this information for vetting, justification, and possible consideration to be made part of a project portfolio or an initiative that may be considered from a budgetary and resource allocation perspective. The idea here is these things can be promoted based upon that evaluation to, say, a prospective or a requested or a candidate type of project. And here we might move into a project server or project online, which allows you to do a number of different things. One is that strategic alignment can be done to see if these things align with our overall goals and strategies of the organization. We can further define these things and build business cases for justification to see what it's really going to take to do these things and what kind of value it's really going to add. We can determine what methods might be used. Some might be more conducive to waterfall projects, at which point Project Server and Project Online are very good platforms to manage through execution and delivery the project from end to end. But then again, maybe some software development projects that might be more conducive to an agile approach. There's folks that would then need to review and approve and even build a portfolio backlog of things that could be considered candidates for development. And the idea here is some of that vetting can happen to decide what it is we might want to work on at a high level. So a project or initiative at what's considered maybe an epic item or an epic entity within an agile approach would then be approved and then potentially handed off to teams for more detailed analysis and execution. Now, how does that happen? Well, traditionally, software development teams may be jumping right over to into Team Foundation Server or Visual Studio Team Service, and they may be building detailed plans. They may be creating epics and features and stories from a planning perspective, and then planning out sprints and iterations, and doing all that separately off to the side in TFS or Visual Studio Online. What Tivity is doing is helping bridge the gap with Tivity's Project Connect that allows us to say, take the approved information or the approved initiatives or projects or epics that have gone through that vetting process over to the left through the Innovation Hub and through this green area over here, and then pass that over and create those elements over in Visual Studio so that the approved information with other relevant descriptive information could be passed over to the teams so that they can then, as them being the technical experts, how best to execute on this. This is what we want. This is what we've approved. This is the net effect that we want to have as an organization or provide to our customers, both internal and external. And then the teams can then work and do their things so that they can actually work as they have in the past using the tools that they want to use in software development and from an agile perspective. Now, this is not exclusive in this domain to Microsoft Visual Studio Online or Team Foundation Server. Folks are using other agile tools out there. Jira is very popular out in the marketplace. VersionOne is a very popular tool out there, as well as Rally from CA. The idea, this concept, could hold true in either case. But folks that are Microsoft shops might, in working with things like .NET, etc., may be working in Visual Studio already. And that's where we're focusing on this use case today. Now, this is not a one-way push. The information that goes on and the execution that goes on within Visual Studio, the progress that's made on features and stories and epics over in that tool set. The progress that's made, how it's progressing through the development cycle. Things like time, time that's spent, time that's estimated to be remaining to go. That information can all be entered there in the tools that the developers are using, but Tivity Connect then passes that information and shares it back with Project Server and Project Online so that it gets full visibility into the central portfolio for the organization, meaning that that will house the portfolio and the information for both waterfall projects and agile projects in the same solution. Yet no duplication of effort, no duplication of entry. One source of entry for everyone, but multiple uses perhaps for the information as it's passed. The other benefit of this is we're building rich data sets so that the reporting analytics and metrics can be coming from a central solution. Now there may be multiple data sources, and the advent of Power BI from Microsoft gives us a lot of flexibility. A lot of folks are using SQL Server reporting services, SSRS out there, but this information can then be garnered from repositories of information that are being built on an ongoing basis as a natural output of us just doing the work. And then that dashboarding and reporting can become a natural output of the process. Today, a lot of folks, because of the disconnected systems or multiple fragmented information, are having to compile this information either manually or semi-manually to get the reporting that management wants or that they need to do report up the chain and just share information across their teams. So the idea is that this solution here can provide a very cohesive process for both planning, selection, execution, and all the reporting around that, regardless of the methodology that's being used. So here's where a little bit more elaboration on Tivity's Project Connect comes in. We basically have developed some pre-built connectors that can simply be put into place into this mix and let you map process and data that needs to be shared across. Some of the ones in this realm of combining Agile and Waterfall, as we talked about, are just Jira, VersionOne, Visual Studio, Rally, SharePoint, connection with just general SQL Server databases. And then we have other things in the areas of financial integration with financial systems and such, but the focus here today is really on getting this combined Agile and Waterfall mix from a PPM perspective. And the idea is that these connectors leverage the Microsoft Cloud and Azure, but they can be deployed to connect cloud or on-premise applications. So it doesn't have to be all cloud or all on-premise. A lot of times folks think they have to stay on-premise in order to have integration, and that's not true any longer. And then the idea is that these integrations can be centrally managed via Project Connect for monitoring health and activity and transaction logs, all the processes around the data interchanges that go through there. And also, as opposed to in the past where folks have done these integrations as one-off custom integrations and that the customer is then responsible for maintaining and managing these and upgrading those as the technology and the tools change. Tivity then manages these as products and maintains the updates for the customer so that they don't have to worry about those things or worry about that their integrations are going to become obsolete. So what does this really do in the unified PPM and Agile solution? It essentially lets you have an end-to-end process overarching this from the demand management and the intake side, the ideas and the requests, all the way through the portfolio analytics and selection, all the way through the resource allocation and management across it all, financial management and managing the costs and the budgeting and the actual costs across all that, a central place to do all of your time reporting and capture time, whether that has to be captured just from tracking projects or if it has to be captured for chargeback or billing or whatever it might be. And then as we mentioned earlier on, having central repositories or a central data model such that the business intelligence and reporting can become a natural output of the process instead of becoming, or instead of them being projects in and of themselves to get that data out. So this could be contributed to from both traditional waterfall projects that have a more design, build, test, maintain type of approach that we're used to in the past for different types of, say, infrastructure projects or construction projects or whatever they might be. And then it also can include the Agile projects in this same process, all the way through product planning, release planning, sprint tracking, and all the things that people might incorporate in their Agile or iterative approaches. So this combined solution is going to give us a lot of capabilities of merging these two worlds and providing a cohesive view and cohesive operations for companies. So how might this work? Let's take this first example where you have a centralized portfolio of projects. And out of this portfolio of projects, some of these projects may be of an Agile type. Some of them may be of a more enterprise project or waterfall type. But the idea is they coexist all within the same portfolio of projects and in the same solution for central visibility tracking. Now, when an Agile project is designated, that information, as it's approved and made available for work, can then all be pushed over to Visual Studio Online or TFS. And the idea that the detailed planning and breakout of backlogs, features, epic stories, can all be done over in Visual Studio Online where the developers are working, or so they can work in the tools that they're working in on a day-to-day basis. Now, once those things are broken out and identified within here and assigned to teams or assigned to individuals within the teams, they can then feed that information into the system, and Tivity Connect will then pass that information back to Project Online or Project Server and allow us to view that information in a variety of ways. By what features or stories the information is associated with, by what iterations they are, or however you'd like to slice the data. It just passes that data back. It doesn't have to be entered in a separate place. It's just being worked in Visual Studio. And then that information is being shared back with Project Online via Tivity's Project Connect. So in essence, you have a closed loop process here without manual intervention once this thing is set up. Now, there could be a hybrid situation as well. Let's just say you have project plans that maybe part of the project needs to be done in a waterfall project. Maybe the upfront requirements and design pieces are considered to be more waterfall in nature. And the actual development pieces within the project are going to be done in an iterative fashion. And then maybe the implementation or deployment pieces are done once again in a more waterfall type of approach. That can be accommodated with Tivity's Project Connect. You can designate which parts of the project plan are going to be done in an Agile fashion, and then only those pieces can be passed over to Visual Studio Online or TFS, can be worked on by those development teams, and then the same process happens where that information and those updates are then passed back to Project Online or Project Server to get that feedback from the teams on an electronic basis without manual processing of that information or duplicate entry of that information. So it can be a hybrid. It does not have to be an all or nothing proposition. All right, so what does this unified PPM and Agile solution look like? Well, with that, let's take a look at what it might look like in the software and just give kind of a high-level demonstration. So, we talked about that earlier part in that what that solution landscape might look like. So here we have an idea for what a project request or ideas capture might look like. Here we have a list of items that have been requested. These can be, depending on who you want to give access to this to, it could be from your stakeholders, from the business. It could be external or internal customers. And the idea that these things can be brought in here, vetted. People can vote on these things to see how they like the idea and see what kind of popularity or rating might happen. And the idea is that high-level information and initial information that might feed into a business case or describing in more detail what's being asked for can be put in here. So here, for example, if I look at the details of this particular item and I go to say edit that, And by the way, these are flexible. These are examples only. But the idea, you may capture the title of what this request is, the details specifically, so you can be very clear about what it is that you're requesting. But then you can do things like identify what project type it is, what type of priority or criticality it might be, who the players are, executive sponsors, etc. And even do some things for initial prioritization. Might start talking about the value statement and justification. We might want to talk about categorizing these things and way these things are strategically aligning with corporate goals and objectives, etc. The idea is this information would mirror or embody the way that you value projects and the way you score projects, for example, and the way you prioritize and select your projects. And the idea that these can be all captured in this mode. Now, once these things are done, they actually can be converted into potential or proposed projects. So the key here is if I go to my project center, what you'll see is that you can have different views of projects. So requested projects that maybe are still in that mix and have made it through a couple of gates in that request process could become viable candidates for approval in projects after they've gone through some vetting. Now, your process could be different, but this is just an example, and the system can be configured to map your stages or your the way that you intake projects. But the idea that these can then go through the life cycle of requested projects, approved, and then they're becoming active projects all the way up through. Okay. There are ways that you can do this in a prioritization perspective, and the way you can select the best valued projects for your organization, the ones that are going to deliver the most value. And won't get into too much detail on this today, given time constraints, but the idea is that you can use the portfolio analysis pieces of Project Server so that you can go in and select which projects you want to work with, what type of prioritizations you may want to, prioritization schemes you might want to look at, what projects you'd like to see included in the mix of the evaluation, things that have maybe only reached certain stages of evaluation, and evaluate which projects that you'd like to see. But the key here is that you can come on in, and then after all the data has entered and you've selected your parameters, you can start coming in and looking at the projects that are being considered at that current time. Look at the way that they're aligning or how we've scored them to be aligned to certain business drivers or strategies, like how well is it aligned with just expanding into new markets or improving customer satisfaction. And these things can all be modified here and changed in score if you think there's a different value that should be in here. But the idea is that once you do this for all your projects, you can then review the relative priority of these projects, and based upon the parameters and the weighting that you've set as an organization, you can see here that out of 100% of value of the proposed portfolio, e-commerce portal development is the highest rated project at 8.3% out of that 100%. The list of all these projects and the values in here would basically total up to 100%. And then you can do things like fit these things within your budget constraints. So for example, if we ran a scenario here and said we have $4 million to spend based upon the total cost estimates and things like that, it says that out of the projects that we're considering, 13 projects can be done, but out of that 100% value of that portfolio, only just under 67% of that value will be realized at that $4 million level of spend. And based upon priorities and how they align with our corporate objectives, you can see that these are the projects that were selected. Notice that some were forced in. They could have been compliance projects, pet projects, whatever they are. And here are the ones that were unselected based upon that constraint of $4 million. Now let's just say we decided we wanted to check and see whether or not $4,500,000 or $4.5 million would be allocated. If we could allocate just another $500,000, it's going to calculate that and tell me, well, we can do 4 more projects and actually achieve 83% of our portfolio value if we just add $500,000 of budget. And then here is the result. Now we can do things like save these scenarios, compare different scenarios and what projects are in or out of those types of things, and we can actually get that type of information. And this stuff can also be done with resources as well. So you can use your resource constraints to see where you're short resources, etc. But the idea here is that this governance and approval and prioritization project process includes both waterfall and agile projects in the mix. That's the key point we're trying to make here today. So let's go back to the project center. And here we have a list of requested projects. And as you can see over here in the project type, we've designated certain projects being agile projects, and the enterprise project type is really designated for the waterfall type projects. And here you can see which projects are in which stage. And you can always take a look at this in different ways and have them filtered, grouped in different ways to look at it from different perspectives. But to get to this hybrid, many of you may be familiar in working with Project Server or Project Online or waterfall portfolio management solutions. Let's just say though, in the traditional way to use this in a standalone method, I could select a project, and if it's a waterfall project, I can say open that project, and it would open it in Microsoft Project or the online planning version of Microsoft Project in Office 365. Now, what's different here is that this Agile project, and in the scenario I described in the slides, we can choose to open this in Visual Studio Online. So when we open this project in Visual Studio Online, the information that it will go to is the plan that's built over in Team Services in Visual Studio Online. Now here is the higher level epics that are breaking out this project into its highest elements. Breaking this out, you can get down to the feature level that support all the things that we're doing for these different epics. And then all the way down to the story level where we have user stories and then tasks and tests, etc., to break it down to the level of detail that happens in here. Okay. Now, this information is done by the teams in Project Online, in Visual Studio Online, and they get to work in the tools that they're used to working in. Yet they're supporting the overall process that's being managed in Project Online. So here we're looking at a backlog view and a hierarchy from epics down to features, down to stories, down to tasks and bugs. We could also look at these types of things in a Kanban board. So let's say, for example, I wanted to look at an iteration or a sprint. I can come in here and look at this from a board perspective. And I can come in and say, here are the stories and the tasks and bugs that are being worked on. And these Kanban boards can be used to then move these across the different stages from new to active to resolved and closed, or whatever the process breakout that the stages that you decide you want to work on. And as simple as moving these things to different stages, and those different statuses would then be passed automatically back to Project Online to the portfolio so that we can see where the overall status of these items are at. Now also in here, you can open up any of these items, and though you may be collecting time and other estimates within the overall portfolio management solution, here always put in your updates within these work elements within Visual Studio Online and tell how much work has been completed, how much has been remaining, and then the entries here would then be passed back and feed into maybe an overall time reporting process into your timesheet, if there is one, that you have back in Project Online. Also, you can do all the tracking you want for these sprints. Here you see a cumulative flow diagram of what's remaining as far as work goes, but you can easily see the traditional Agile things like your burn downs and your burn ups, your cumulative flow diagrams, etc., all to support the teams in the tools that they're working on. Now, here, when I'm looking at the capacity of these types of things, one of the things you can see here is for the individual team, for the individual effort and iterations that they're working on, you can see things like their capacity, right? You can see their work by activity, and you can see who's working on what, and look at that from a team perspective for this particular effort. What's missing, and as we talk about Agile with SAFe or rolling up to a portfolio in PPM, is that more broad capacity view across all work efforts, because these teams or these people that are supporting these teams may be working on a multitude of efforts across the organization. So the idea there is that how do we get that information viewed from in here. It's very difficult within Visual Studio Online or even most Agile tools in this type of view, because it's really focused on the team delivery. So really, if we go back to Project Online and we want to go back to the portfolio, we can look at a few things back here. So for example, if I went to the Project Center here and I wanted to look at a Visual Studio type of view, say the Visual Studio project view. No, let me go in here. Let me go into a summary view. And let's say I wanted to group these, oh, excuse me, my bad. Let's say we want to go down to the Fabricam project, which we were working on. And then I want to go look at the detailed project plan for that. All the information here was not built in Microsoft Project. This all came back to us from Visual Studio Online. So the hierarchy of epic features, stories, down to the tasks and bugs that we're working on, as well as the actual work that came back and the remaining work that's available from the estimates that we put in there, are all within here. We can also go to the mode of looking at this broken out in different ways. I could say, how is this broken out and which things are part of which sprints or what iterations. So visibility into what's happening over in Visual Studio is automatically available to you over here in Project Online because of the Tivity Connect passing of the data and sharing of the data seamlessly between those. Another key piece here is the resource management piece that I mentioned earlier on. If I go into the Resource Center and I select a group of resources in here, whether they're working on Agile projects, waterfall projects, or both, I can come in here and I can say, look at capacity planning across all of it. So instead of just being focused on the certain initiatives or work efforts at the team level, I can start looking at multiple projects and seeing where different resources are allocated. So not only just the individual names, I can see that Amy is here on 2 different projects and she's red because she's actually over allocated in those periods. We even have some unassigned generic business analyst that needs to find a home with some people on it. But we can see the allocations across all of this work, Agile projects as well as waterfall projects alike. So the key is that this solution here can aggregate and help you do resource management across all of it. And even down to not just the projects, but down to the individual work assignments. So on the different projects, you can see Amy here is on several different projects, and it can tell me how she's allocated across the different specific tasks within any one of those projects, regardless of what type of project it is. And we can look at a number of different resources that way. So this becomes a very powerful solution for resource visibility, as well as planning and knowing where people are already spoken for before you assign them to yet another initiative or another piece of work. Now, the other key piece here that I had mentioned was the idea of reporting. And Power BI from Microsoft is really doing some great things, and Tivity's working very strongly there with a report pack that gives people a whole slew of out-of-the-box reporting and dashboards. And for example, just an example here, I'm looking at a hybrid portfolio dashboard that is made up of an aggregation of a number of different reports on one screen. Now this is an accumulation of Agile and waterfall projects. Here I'm looking at gauges for cost, risk, return on investment. I've got sprint burn down charts for the actual Agile projects as well as the bug trends. I've got a strategic portfolio bubble chart that basically is giving me a view into all the different projects and where they fit on a return on investment versus risk set of axes. So basically high return and low risk is an area that we would hope to be in. It looks like we have some projects that fall into that realm, but we also have some that are falling into that high risk, low value. So some of these might be compliance projects that we're forced to work on. And all these types of reports can be drilled into. So the idea here is that you can look at these things, get more detailed information about the information in that bubble chart, and also use slicers to focus in onto different portfolio. So for example, if I just wanted to focus in on portfolio items for a specific business driver or strategic initiative, I can do that. Also, things like resource information. The resource capacity information that I showed you in Project Online, that information is all available to us here in Power BI as well with some of the reports that we've developed. Here we can see the stack up of our resource capacity and also be able to drill into these resource capacity diagrams and then really slice through these based on particular resources or groups of resources, like particular projects. I want to look at Daniel Williams specifically and let's look at how he's allocated across what projects. Over time, I can see all those things at a very high performance way of looking at all these things. So the key here is that you could have all types of reporting. We have financial reporting, portfolio reporting, and other types of execution reports that you might want to look at. And Tivity gets you really started with a bunch of pre-developed reports so you don't have to build all this stuff from scratch. And the cool thing about Power BI here is that if you have information from a variety of different sources, you can actually look at different services or applications that are out there. There's a bunch of pre-built connectors to use those as data sources. You can actually get them from individual files that are local or on OneDrive, like Excel files, etc. And you can also get that information from different databases, primarily SQL Server databases at this point. But the idea here is that this information and these reports can be compiling data from a variety of different data sources. So let's go back. And talk a little bit about the use case or sample use case of what we just saw. So sample use case here, the PMO selects or goes through the selection process of the projects to be executed, the PMO with the executives or the steering committee folks. The PMO sets level tasks and dates in the portfolio, what the expectations are of what they want and when. The developers then can manage the detailed tasks and dates in their application lifecycle management tool of choice. In this case, we showed Visual Studio Online and TFS, but it could just as easily have been a Jira or the other tools that we mentioned like VersionOne. Developers then assign the tasks themselves within their realm, within their tools, and then report progress on how they're doing against those within their ALM tool. The PMO then gets instant visibility into the tasks, assignments, and progress on the things that the developers are working on, things that they often don't have ready access to today. And then the executives now get a single source of reporting for it all. So a closed loop process, no duplication of entry, yet high value information on a very quick turnaround basis. So the value of the integration. The integration drives enhanced visibility and helps ensure alignment with business goals through that portfolio process. We then get robust project portfolio management and the tools and the software, and we can integrate all work and resources into a single view regardless of the type of method that's being used to manage that project. Project Connect from Tivity quickly and reliably brings together information from different business systems. And hence we get a holistic view of resource availability and efficiency, and we get more forecasting and realistic expectations out of the system that we can manage. And then just the overall governance and planning and executing and reporting process is more integrated and seamless from end to end. At the end of the day, comprehensive reporting, centralized planning and control, compliance with traceability requirements because all the information is tracked and versioned. Streamline collaboration and communication across all the roles in the process, and hopefully at the end of the day, because of the ease of use, the lack of manual reporting, and the quickness and no duplication of effort, hopefully your users in your mix within the organizations are happier users through the mix. And we're bringing together the different solutions that you're working with today within the organization. So with that, to wrap up, we are Tivity, and some special offers that we have is if you're more interested into seeing something in more depth or something that's designed as far as a demonstration more applicable to your use case, please contact us at info@tivity.com, and we're happy to have a discussion with you further and talk about your specific needs and pain points that might need to be addressed or your requirements. We do offer on an ongoing basis, and we'll be doing so through the end of June, a free PPM and Agile assessment and roadmap of where we think we can help you and to addressing the needs of the things that you're looking at and some of the progress or enhancements that you'd like to make within the organization. We can also arrange for you a free trial of Project Online and help set that up for you and nurture you and actually give you support through that trial. And we're happy to do that to you as a free service to see how you might be able to get the most value out of the solutions that we showed you today. Keep in mind, we have webinars on really great topics all the time. Our next one that's coming up is called Identifying Your Best Portfolio of Projects within Project Online, getting more in depth than I got today as part of just one component of what we were showing you on the combined solution. That will be on May 11th at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, the same time as today, noon Eastern. Once again, my name is Jim Patterson. If you want to speak with someone directly, feel free to reach out to me or at the info at Tivity.com, and just let us know if we can help you explore these ideas further. With that, I hope that you got some value out of today's content, and everybody have a great day.